John Donovan.
Hi, Marty.
Marty Keller here in Sacramento. You and your beautiful new spacious digs down there in Oceanside, California.
Yeah. It's converted bank building. It's my daughter redecorated it for the purpose of this treatment center, and she made it warm, spacious, inviting, non-clinical. It's really cool.
Great.
So,
Well, I'm hoping someday to have your daughter on the podcast and learn more about.
Cool. Yeah, because she's agreed. So we just got to find a date.
I know
that works for her, and
she's probably busier than you and me, but and that's fine. It will work out.
Yeah.
So before we started, you were mentioning something that you read from Rudolf Steiner, and just before you share that, I'd just like to let those of you who never heard of Rudolf Steiner, you might want to check him out. He started a school of thinking called anthroposophy, and as opposed to theosophy, and which was also started around the same time. We're talking about the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and that great explosion of inquiry that came after the Civil War as modernity and the industrial age was opening up rapidly, and wealth was being created at rates never ever seen before in human history. And there was, at the same time, in the culture, there was a sense of the utter power of science to lead us into the future, that if things could be studied scientifically, including spirituality and psychology, then if we could just figure all of it out, this is almost like Newtonianism taken to its nth degree. If we just figure out the clock, the universal clock, we could fix every problem in the world.
Yeah.
And of course, it's Einstein, 1905, in his theory of special relativity, starts to put the kibosh on all that Newtonianism. But Steiner was a really important guy in that period because of his insights. And so I just wanted to give a little background to those who don't know about him.
Yeah, I've been listening to him now for several months. My grandson's going to Waldorf school. So I decided to listen to the founder of Waldorf School, which is Rudolf Steiner. And it's amazing material. It's about the science of spirituality. It's taken the spiritual or the scientific concept and then applying the invisible, unknown, unseeable forces into scientific method and seeing a demonstration, like the hypothesis, and then you get something that's consistent outcome. Well, he's doing that with spirituality, which is
right,
unbelievably cool. What I heard today was that the emotion of anger is a necessary ingredient to the search for higher meaning. And that if somebody, and let me explain what I mean by anger. It's the sense of an injustice, the recognition of an injustice or a harm about to happen to self or others. And it's this whelming of energy that one gets to defend or stop or say no. It's an energy, and it's a neutral energy. It's not personal. It's simply, this hurts, don't do that again. And that this feeling or whelming of my awareness of a sense of injustice is vital to my spiritual journey or expansion. And the way he put it, and it makes perfect sense to me, is that if I have this capacity to feel this whelming of energy about an injustice, I can then apply that to at times where I find myself being selfish to motivate me to a different sphere or a different sense or perception, or to look at, have the courage to look at what's happening internal with me, and that emotion is vital to that. And it's what I've known in a different way. And when he explained it, it just gave me a way to articulate this. And I don't know if I sound more confident, or I'm more confident about what I know. And what I know is that we live in a society that uses the word anger to describe all types of violence, and it has nothing to do with this whelming of energy at this sense of injustice. And that what we pigeonhole or classify as anger in each other is simply the expression of childhood trauma in the form of resentment, bitterness, contempt, or projection. And it's a defensive fight, flight, freeze survival mechanism response to a threat, a perceived threat. And it's well, I'll get into more of that. This perceived threat is something from the childhood, a danger or something that has passed and is no longer working, and yet it still works in my current reality. So
let's see if we can unpack some of that.
That's what I was just going to say.
I have a question if you're open.
Yes.
So my first question is the origin of the experience of this whelming.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that feeling into what we call the terrible twos or the temper tantrum? Is a temper tantrum that I experienced as a 2-year-old anger, resentment? Because what I'm trying to drive to is, the authenticity of the genuine emotion versus the substitute that I heard you talking about.
Okay. I sure didn't expect that question. That's cool. What I can say from my experience with my grandson, and then looking back on my experience growing up, which is sparse because I have not a whole lot of memories at his age, which is 5, that he is in the process of learning to identify emotion. And he has people around him, me and his mother, who mirror that for him. So if he's throwing a tantrum, and his tantrums get more sophisticated as he gets older, I simply say, I see you're irritated, or I see you're angry. And then whatever prompted the outburst, like, no, you can't have the second cookie, and we're going to wait for dinner for another cookie, and then he goes into that again, and then I simply mirror his response in the form of what I perceive as either anger or irritation, so that he can feel, so that he gets validated in. I don't punish him for learning to emotionally regulate. I hold a space for him. I hold a firm space for him, and I redirect, but I do not punish him. He doesn't. There's no physical punishment. There's no. It used to be sit on a chair or go to your room, and we've even stopped that. It's a mirroring and then a boundary setting situation where he's learning about his internal feeling states. Yeah. So
again, based on what I heard you say from Rudolf Steiner,
mm-hmm.
is any of that experience that he's learning for himself the anger that Steiner's talking about? Or is it just expressions of unhappiness? So for example, I could see a 4-year-old saying, it's not fair that you don't let me have my second cookie.
Yeah, and to him, that's absolute truth.
Right. So that's,
In his
so that would
world,
be, that would be the
yeah.
anger that Steiner's talking about.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm going to learn more about this as I go through my
Sure.
life, and especially with my experience with him. But I would say that when I got angry, if I ever did get angry and just didn't stuff it, something drastic happened to me as a child. I was either punished, beaten, um, um, and I wasn't able to experience myself in an emotional state without being ostracized or abandoned. Which now that, and what I teach people in the intentional living is that the feeling that I'm afraid of, the feeling that is stuffed and I don't want to experience, is my feeling of aliveness, which was demeaned, diminished, chastised, ridiculed, and humiliated as a child. So when that feeling of aliveness comes up, it could be anger, passion, excitement, connection. It would trigger this response, this reaction in my survival mechanism, which says, watch out, danger is about to happen. So I would shut down. Most women complain about men being emotionally unavailable. Well, yeah, okay, I get that. I was emotionally unavailable, although I believed I was available because I listened to you. Then I either responded with, we already talked about this, or I know, or, what are you saying this again for, or in a dismissive way. So, and then I was tagged as an angry man. Well, okay. I was a violent man. I used emotional, verbal, and physical violence in the form of dismissing, ignoring, threatening, raising my voice. And all those actions from me were tagged as anger. So I didn't want to be angry because either I got hurt or people got hurt. There was separation. So I tried not to feel this anger, which the action I was in had nothing to do with anger. It had to do with this pain of childhood trauma, which manifested in me. I ferreted out is resentment, bitterness, and contempt about something that was subconscious. So it's like I couldn't even figure it out, which led me to relationship after relationship, trying to find the right woman, all the stuff that wounded people do to manage through their life.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that, and I'm thinking of my own childhood experience as you're talking, that when we felt genuine anger, that an injustice was occurring according to our little, age appropriate framework, and we were told either verbally or through physical action, spanking, sent to our room, whatever, we were basically told to not feel that way,
Yes.
that we are not allowed to have that feeling.
Right.
Then my experience is that almost immediately became resentment.
Yes.
It's like, I can't tell you how much I hate you that you have not allowed me to express myself.
Yes.
And
Right.
that resentment not only smolders in the moments after the activity that did the squashing, but it lives on.
Yes.
As first of all, unforgiveness, a planning for revenge,
Yes.
or getting even, and therefore, of course, alienation from the perpetrator.
Yes.
And as we know from this work, and I'm being alienated from my own genuine self because I have agreed to move to resentment instead of staying in anger.
Yes.
Not consciously,
right.
but by virtue of I had no other choice.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And yes, and then I projected that resentment, bitterness, contempt onto the significant person in my life,
or to our boss,
or to our boss,
or to the policeman who stopped us for speeding,
Yes.
I mean, it's almost any authority figure. I'm just speaking for myself, where I'm experiencing this as an injustice and I cannot express my anger at it
Right.
because I'll be fired, I'll be arrested, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And so that resentment energy comes right up, and it gets added to the gunny sack of resentments, which for many of us, that's a pretty big vessel.
Yes. And when it does finally get expressed, it's not, here's the thing. If my reticular activating system, that like group of cells that filter out non-essential information that are hooked into the survival mechanism, my body is responding to a police officer or even an expression of affection from a significant other as a death threat, because that's what it was as a child. So the response is in alignment with a death threat. An example of that I use a lot and is actually relevant to me is that my toast is burnt. What the fuck? And it's like, or there's a soap bubble on the dish, you didn't rinse it right. And this reticular, this survival mechanism, I'm in an adrenaline rush because my body, this is all subconscious, unknown to my rational mind, is in a threatened position, and I respond in accordance with that. So toasted burnt is maybe, I don't even think it's on the scale anymore, but maybe it's a 0.12. Okay, I go to 8. And that response is in direct proportion to that survival mechanism, which sees my dismissal as a life or death threat.
Right.
That I stored.
Right. And the one I've shared here before is the doing something clumsy.
Yes.
Dropping a dish,
Oh my
knocking
God.
something over, immediately rage
Yes.
erupts in my body. It's like, where did that come from?
Right.
It's just a glass.
Yes.
No, it's life or death.
It becomes a life or death situation, because when something like that happened to me as a child, something happened after that was demeaning, diminishing, up to including corporal punishment for just being human.
Right. So the question is, going back to the Rudolf Steiner insight, is that experience that I have when I drop the glass, I knock something over or whatever, and my body feels this flame of energy, is that anger?
That's adrenaline.
Okay.
And adrenaline's purpose is to move us out of our emotional body, our personalizing body, move us out of our rational mind, and move to safety or fight, attack what's there in front of you, flight, run, scream, pound my feet on the floor and slam the door in my room, or freeze. And the other one that was added to it is please. My response in a lot of situations was freeze. I just go blank. I would just stand there,
Right.
sit there. If I was being berated, I'd just blank out and I wouldn't respond. Or the other extreme, I'd enmesh with the energy and become violent myself.
So the adrenaline rush that you're noting in the experience that I'm having is actually covering up fear.
Yes,
Fear that
it could.
I'm gonna be separated because I did something wrong.
Fear of punishment, yeah. But it's also covering up the sense of being alive, and our emotions are our sense of being alive, and it's passion, excitement, sad, hurt, afraid, and when a feeling of aliveness comes up, this mechanism says, watch out. Last time this happened when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all these years that you were in this dysfunctional arena and childhood trauma, that something, you got punished. So something happened to you that was hurtful somehow, either being separated, hit, slapped, ridiculed, told you're stupid.
I have no, this is the way this works. It's so beautiful. I have no memory of an explicit incident where I got punished for doing something clumsy or
Right.
inarticulate. Yet the evidence is that I must have, because the reaction is so automatic. And so, so it's hard for me even to speculate what that feeling of liveness that I was having that got beaten out of me, what it was.
Right.
And maybe it was nothing more than an experiment to try to figure out how to do something that failed.
Right.
I was trying to figure out how to put something back and it slipped and broke.
Right. Yes. Act of being alive and exploring, or being adventurous or curious. Yes.
Right. So again, I'd like to continue to drill down into this Steiner insight, because it caught your eye, it caught your attention. And
it did. And how it caught my eye is that it validated my sense that when people talk about anger, they're not really talking about the emotion of anger. They're talking about the end result behavior of trauma, and they're tagging that violence, anger. And we even say, you know, angry men go to jail. Well, no, violent men go to jail. If somebody who, it's like Gandhi, his quote was, if you look around at the condition of the planet today and you are not enraged, there's something wrong with you. So the feeling of anger is a whelming and a movement towards action. It has nothing to do with violence. Because from this feeling of injustice, I can move to stand in front of the injustice and say no. I can move to organize, or I can, everything Gandhi did was from this feeling and being able to experience his own rage. And he's been, he's the most nonviolent. If you talk about nonviolence, everybody goes to Gandhi or Martin Luther King. He felt anger. So that anger was, he used, as far as what Rudolf Steiner is telling me and I'm putting together, he used that to stay on his spiritual path in the face of what's going on in the world. So that anger was vital to him to nurture and love himself, to take care of himself, to question his own motives about why he's doing, because Gandhi wasn't always the spiritual guy. He was a lawyer trained in London and came to South Africa and considered himself part of the system. And then he got exposed to somebody not liking him on a train, and it was foreign to him. They threw him off a train, and he's going, "What are you doing? I'm a British citizen." And he just got it that, oh my God, no, he's not. He's brown. So this feeling of anger, instead of like going out and getting a gun and shooting people, he organized and created movements in South Africa. And when he finished in South Africa, he went to India. So he had access to his anger. That's what I'm trying to say. He was able to process this emotion of anger, this energetic frequency of this is unfair, it's untenable, and then stand in the face of the most powerful force on the planet in that day, which was the British government.
I think it's important, if I'm going to understand this correctly, to point out that fear is not political. That fear is a sense of injustice regardless of the perspective from which it comes. So I said before we got started that in the book that I've completed, I've come to understand that each level of development is always going to defend itself against the one that's trying to emerge. So emergence is violent. Something, here's status quo, now there's a new emergence. So for millennia, the status quo was the tribal consciousness. Everybody belongs to a tribe. My tribe is the correct tribe. Your tribe is the enemy. And then 500 years ago, a new sense of consciousness arose, which is, no, I don't need a tribe to be a complete, authentic person. I'm my own person. Mm-hmm. And the authentic individual becomes an enemy to the tribe because the tribe will disappear if everybody decides he or she is an authentic individual. What do we need the tribe for? So there's going to be a sense of injustice from both perspectives that will create anger, which is you're trying to leave, you're trying to kill the tribe. That's going to generate a sense of anger. And the person who gets that, no, I'm doing this for my own self, can be angry at the injustice of trying to be prevented from moving ahead. Right. So I think it's critical to, as we explore Steiner's insight, that we get that anger is neither right nor wrong. It is just this sense that an injustice is about to occur, and that what constitutes an injustice is perspective bound. So what may be an injustice to you might be a liberating activity to me, depending on my perspective.
Yes, it's all held in our perception and our experience, what we've created to identify self.
Right.
Yes, yes, absolutely, and a good point.
So let's bring it back to accountability. I was always struck. I was always struck when you started creating this distinction. I don't know how long ago I first heard you say it, 3-4 years ago, because it seemed intuitively correct that I did not know how to express anger in an authentic and unalloyed way. That anger always seemed to come with something else. Like you said earlier, a tendency to turn into a violent activity or behavior, or a resentment, which I didn't even recognize that it was resentment. But it did, as I reflected on it when I first heard you suggest this, it did help me realize that it was a substitute for something else. That this energy that I was feeling, that I was calling anger, was, like you said earlier, in the case that I was talking about, I dropped something, it's an adrenaline rush. It's not necessarily even an emotion. It's a defense mechanism being activated that then morphs with the thought and the defense mechanism into I'm angry, when that's not actually what's going on. And so over the past several years, I've started to pay attention to this. And I do find genuine anger relatively rare.
Yes.
And part of it is because it's my intention to create a world of joy, peace, freedom, and community. And so I work on avoiding injustice as I work on letting that intention become manifest.
Yeah, and my thought was, in my own personal journey, is that the intent to live in peace, the pathway through that is my entire emotional body, which includes my experience of anger.
Right.
So that I can then use that energy internally to move through my discomfort, to move through my fear, or taking a risk and doing something that is not in alignment with today's society of a picture of a man. Or yes, absolutely.
So so again, to go back to the accountability practice. So accountability practice, for me, one of the major gifts that it offers me is to help me make a distinction between what's actually going on in my life right now or how I'm responding to what's actually going on in my life right now, as opposed to whether that's mirroring something that happened before.
Correct.
So burnt toast.
Right.
So what's going on in my life is the toast is burned. And if I'm flying into a rage, then the burnt toast is in fact reminding me of something that calls forth that energy authentically when I was 2 or 3 or whatever.
Yes.
And that I'm utterly disconnected from this truth. And so the toast becomes the proximate cause for my behavior. The accountability practice allows me to ask the question, is that really true? Is the burnt toast really a threat to me right now? Or as we say in our work, the issue is not the issue. What is the issue? And so accountability allows me to use the feeling, the experience, to explore what's really going on.
Okay, yeah. So me responding in a violent manner to burnt toast. So if I own that behavior, how would I name it? And for me, I named it mean. So the end result of my childhood trauma was mean. I became mean up to including, do my toast right, and that's mean. So if I own the end result, this is where the truth, if I put that in the accountability point, my truth, I'm mean. Well, that statement, I'm mean, is in alignment with my childhood trauma, which I have no memory of, a lot of it.
Right.
And there's a resonance in my body. So mean is a validation of the trauma. And when the trauma is validated, I just say the truth, no blame, no judgment. I mean, there's this alignment internally in this mechanism, survival mechanism, which says, yeah, thanks for listening. I've been trying to keep you safe by producing these actions and reactions in you. And it's like an alignment, and there's a lucid relief of keep yelling, keep screaming, hold your ground, all these things we say, don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. There's a relief of that because the trauma was validated through just owning the end result of the trauma. And then I feel that, and this is mostly subconscious, and then something bubbles up in me about, what do I want? It is my intent to be kind. It is my intent to be gracious. It is my intent to be humble. And then that intent is now a directive that fuses with the validation frequency of the trauma, and then goes back down into my subconscious, reframed. So my responses become different. So now I see burnt toast and I'll just, I almost get giddy because either the toaster is set wrong, the toaster broke, or I really want to go out for breakfast instead of make my own. I mean, it's just part of, I can look for a response that's in alignment with the degree of urgency that's there, which is usually very little. So
yeah, the alignment with the actual circumstances was what was popping for me.
So this is I'm glad we're having this conversation, because in the accountability process, I say my truth. Well, truth is like, we're looking for something holy. We're looking for the angel singing place in this. What is the truth? Well, I mean, is my personal truth. It is true and in alignment with what I experienced as a child in that place that's not rational. And that's where the relief, everybody that's done this that I know that have experienced this, you can just see their body relax. And they're saying some pretty detrimental stuff in this, where they find themselves, like controlling, mean, arrogant, and it's like, and it's counterintuitive, and yet it works. And then I'm trying to find a way to explain the reality, and this is what I've come up with, that truth is in alignment with no blame or judgment, And it's a relief feeling. It's like, thank you for working hard to keep me safe. You can stop now because it is my intent to be kind. And then my actions from that simply automatically shift to something different. And I'm not saying better or worse. And sometimes they are better and sometimes they are worse. And it's simply another opportunity for me to go in this healing space of naming the end result of truth. So.
You were in my mind this week. I had an experience just before the Rusty Nail Club meeting on Monday. I got a call from one of my siblings who said that another one of our siblings was incredibly unhappy. So our mother is in the last months of her life, and the sibling is taking care of our mother, and that's become a burden that's incredibly emotional and difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt fear and sadness and shame and anger. And we're in the meeting, and one of the members of the meeting actually worked me through the accountability tree. Yes. And said, what's the real issue? Because I was sharing with them, because this had just happened right before the meeting. And so I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself, okay, what's really going on? And this is what came to mind. I'm a terrible brother. I'm betraying my family.
Yeah.
And I'm a terrible son.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the truth.
Yeah.
That was the source of the agitation.
Mm-hmm.
And no blame, no judgment. I'm sitting there going, no blame, no judgment. But that was the truth that showed up because of the generosity of one of the members of the meeting, because I'm the facilitator, right? I'm supposed to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
So then I was able to create, well, what do I want in this recognition? Well, I want compassion and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
So I intend to create compassion and kindness in my relationship with this particular sibling. And, the aftermath of that has been a lot of really heartfelt communication with several of my siblings, and the devising of a strategy to help support the situation in a renewed way. And so this stuff really works, because there really is this experience in our lives, and I'll just speak for me now. I have this experience in my life of all of this, there's something wrong with you energy.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes down to love equals I'm unlovable.
Yes.
And oftentimes for me, unlovable means betrayed. Mm-hmm. And that somehow I'm a betrayer, a traitor to the people that I love.
Yeah.
And so without the capacity to look at that without blame or judgment, I just end up on the merry-go-round of resentment and self-incrimination like you wouldn't believe. Like in my head has the Big Bertha of self-incrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Or the nuclear bomb of self-incrimination.
Mm-hmm. In situations like that, I found myself defensive, like defending myself, instead of what we do now is just, okay, what's going on internally? I'm an asshole. Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, it is my intent to be kind. And then see, when we get an adrenaline rush, we lose ourselves, current reality. We lose the situation, current reality. And then we lose the other person, current reality. And we drop into this danger zone of childhood. And then we're in a reactive mode that doesn't make any sense based on the situation. Sometimes other people are right with you in this enmeshment of flinging threats and accusations back and forth instead of looking for a solution. Yes.
Well, it's been a very powerful illustration of the principles, because my initial reaction was utterly defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no consciousness of that, like you were saying. It was just expressing itself.
Yes.
As fear.
Yes.
As there's something wrong here, and and I got to do something, and I don't know what it is. And so again, with that compassionate help of someone who was willing to lead me through this, the good news is I've done this work long enough. It didn't take long to see what the issue was.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, here's it's right here. Here's what I don't want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my training is to ask myself, okay, what is it I don't want to say? And then the information usually presents itself pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But then it allowed me to, again, so that those of you who are watching this to get appreciation for the process, it allowed me to become an adult again. It allowed me to be present in my 69-year-old wisdom and capacity, even with all of my ability to get it wrong and all that kind of stuff, to actually now become someone who can assist in healing rather than someone who is resisting healing.
Yes.
Because I'm too defensive to be able to make a contribution.
Wow.
And so when I was able to do that and conversing with several of my siblings, I was actually impressed how they saw the issue the same way, and they didn't have the same triggers that I did. And I was able to tell them what had happened to me, and that just created more intimacy.
Yes.
Which is what I want. I intend to create a world of joy, peace, freedom, and community. That's the community with my family of origin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
then it also allowed me to sorry, John, it occurred to me, it allowed me also then to discern this question that we started the conversation with. Is there room for genuine anger? Is there unfairness going on? And it allowed me to appreciate how my sibling who is unhappy could see unfairness.
Yes.
That his or her perspective was completely valid. It's like, okay, I get it. The issue for this sibling is that my sibling does not want to have to be facing this death situation going on.
Right. And all by him or herself. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's true, but it allowed me to see this, what's not my issue. What's the possibility that could actually be going on? What's the issue going on over there? It's like, oh, okay. That was from my intention to create compassion and kindness.
Yes.
It's like, so first of all, I got clarity with my issue was, because I was no good to nobody. Right. As long as I'm stuck in my own loop.
Yes.
So I was able to get clarity, and I was able to create the intention for what I wanted instead. And then the result of that was I began to see a different perspective and say, okay, I get it. Then be able to ask the question, is there something I can do about that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Be proactive.
And the answer may be no, but I could explore the possibility before I get, it's like that conversation we had a number of months ago about the accountability rope. Yeah. I wasn't at the end of my accountability rope there.
No. And it's an example of what the 12 steps talk about, moving from reactor to actor.
Right.
And yeah, it's powerful. The accountability process, we say accountability process, there's a constellation of information set up. There's a constellation of information in the experience of it. And it's about adding to a person. It's about empowering the person in their daily life to have a tool that is empowering. You can use it in the moment, or you can use it as soon as I use it as in the moment, or when I figure out I just was associated, I was triggered, I was in a reaction response instead of a response. So.
Right. So going back to Steiner.
Okay.
Again, I'm utterly intrigued by the formulation. The way I wrote it down is anger is vital to the emergence of higher consciousness.
Yes.
And
so
go ahead.
I would I would have this conversation with the men in the jail, that anger is an emotion that's a whelming of energy based on my perception of an injustice, either to myself or somebody else. And their experience of anger is, I want to stay away from my anger. When I get angry, people get hurt. So that's their definition of anger. People get hurt, which I'm describing now as the survival mechanism, fight, flight, freeze, and people get hurt. To my awareness that this anger is this whelming and motivational force for me to stand in the face of an injustice. And I tell them, I said, I want you to know I'm an angry man. And I could feel them backing up. And then I would say, to stand here and face these issues that are coming at me and just be in this jail. If I weren't an angry man, I wouldn't have the motivation to do it. So I just lost my train of thought. So my expression of and my feeling of anger, the expression of it was coming into the jail on a daily basis and motivating me to say things that are totally, when people first hear them, are absurd and corny, and to keep saying it time after time after time, and then explain to them that this emotion of anger connects me to me, and then I can then connect to them, and it has nothing to do with the violence that is in their perception of angry man. So I don't know if that helped.
Well, one of the things I wanted to explore a little bit, that's a follow up on that, is that the kind of anger let's talk about Gandhi again. The kind of anger that Gandhi had was, it was a two-edged sword. So on the one hand, there's the injustice of not being treated according to the way that I believe I'm entitled to being treated.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's a certain way, that's just like a personal, that's about me.
Yeah.
But then there's that leap of consciousness that asks the question, is this really about me? And so he begins to look around and see that other people like him are being treated this way.
Yes.
So it starts out with a sense of personal injustice, and it could have just stayed there. It probably did stay there for most people
Mm-hmm.
in that period, because there aren't that many Gandhis. And it can also be a demonstration of advanced consciousness when we say, okay, is this just about me? And asking the question, is just about me, is an attempt, or it's the act of elevating consciousness. So I no longer am looking at this experience through my own personal lens.
Yeah.
I'm willing to ask a more universal question.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering if that's part of what Steiner was getting at.
Well, I believe so. And my experience of that was that I was working with men who were in jail, and except for the grace of God, I was one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I identified with their behaviors that got them into jail, because I exemplified a lot of those behaviors, only I didn't get caught, or I didn't get put in jail. The injustice of not only the family of origin trauma, but the societal sanctioning of misidentification. Be a man, be a good man, be a tough man, or be a good woman, be submissive, be a good woman, is insidious. It's like, no, who are you? What's you have brought something onto this planet that is of value to the whole planet. What is that expression for you? Because that's what I was looking at in me. What is my expression? To hell with societal's idea of what a man is. to hell with my mother's incriminating meanness, whatever, my dad's like, be tough, no, what is my authentic expression? And then have gone to it in some modicum, it's like, holy, no, this is insidious. And we've built institutions around angry men. It's like the correction system, the judicial system, the law enforcement. It's like, it's insidious. So based on this awareness, it is my intent to create a world where whenever a woman sees a man, she feels safe. It is my vision to create a world where our children are nurtured to their authenticity. And for me to stand and say that in the face of, okay, I don't care. I'm going to say it. And if I hadn't tapped into this anger, this motivating energy, I don't believe I would have been able to do it. And then check my own actions. It's like, my dad was a redheaded, blue-eyed Irishman who married an Hispanic Native American woman, and he was prejudiced. He was embarrassed of his own wife and children. And then I grow up and I'm this like man, and I'm prejudiced. It's like Black people, even against Native Americans. It's like, so once I got, oh my God, this hurts. That hurt. This realization that my father was ashamed of my skin color hurt. And then the thought, well, oh my God, I'm doing this to other people. And it's just, I can feel it now. Hell no. I'm getting through this. This is not okay. So I looked internally at my own prejudice, my own racism, my own sexism, my own, it's like, yeah, oh no, this is stopping right now. And if I hadn't felt that number one realization that I hurt because of prejudice and racism, and being angry about that anger morphed into, let's stop this shit. Let's do something different.
Right. And so in that sense, I think that's what Steiner was talking about.
Yes.
Because not everybody, the point I was trying to make is that not everybody goes there.
Right.
Even when I recognize an injustice being done to me, there's no guarantee that I'm going to worry about that being done to others.
Right.
So for some of us, we go, well, whoa, the solution is not on this level.
No.
The solution's got to be on a more fundamental or a more universal level.
Yeah, and the accusations are complicit. You're complicit in racism if you're not active. It's like, okay, the majority of people have not experienced their own anger.
Right.
So to classify them and to attack, demean, diminish is part of the problem. So intentional living, you hold value beyond measure. What are you looking for? Let's see if and I'm going to do everything in my power to support you to find that thing that you enjoy doing, you love doing, and that is your authentic expression. And I'm talking to people spending, 1 to 5 years in prison, or people who are addicts, alcoholics, and classified as dregs of society. And it's like, no, that's not true. Okay, you bought the lie. I get it. And the behavior showing that you're in alignment with the trauma. So what do you want? What do you want? I see their intrinsic value. I don't see what everybody tells me to see. I don't know if I got off topic there.
No, that's the focus of the work, is that first I learned to be willing to do that for myself.
Yes.
Because it can't go to the rest.
No.
Because then I'll just be back in projection.
Mm-hmm.
So first, it's like what happened to me this week. First, I learned to see what's going on in myself, what you called the truth that's going on, what's true for me.
Yes.
That allows me to ask what's true for us.
Yes.
But not until I have the clarity of what's true for me.
Exactly.
So that's, to me, again, that's what Steiner, I think, was getting at here, that the anger is vital to, maybe this is the way to say this, John, the anger is vital, but it's no guarantee of moving to higher consciousness.
Correct. Yeah, it's a developmental stage,
Right.
and that if it's not there, the other developmental stages are not, you can't do them because you're stuck at some
Right.
developmental stage way back.
Yeah. So it's a gift to evolution.
Yes.
Shall we make that bold declaration?
I like that.
But I think everything's a gift to evolution. I think everything contributes to pushing forward, including all the things that fail.
Yes.
I mean, that was one of Darwin's insights, that evolution happens by different things trying different things, different appearances, different variations, and most of them don't work because they don't create the circumstances for greater health and greater survival. But some things do, and those are the adaptations that become incorporated into the next level.
Yeah.
And I suggest that's exactly the way it works with consciousness. So all of these things that we do in our lives have value, and part of it because you don't know which one is going to be the one that succeeds.
Nope, you do not.
And so you be willing. I'm willing to allow myself to have these feelings. I'm willing to allow myself to make mistakes. I'm willing to allow myself to fail. Is a commitment to my and our evolution.
Yes.
Because this is the way it works. And there's no getting around it.
No. The only way out is through it.
Exactly.
Our emotional feeling about it. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Our developmental stages that we missed, go back and re-experience. And I woke up one day and 45 years old, realizing that I had the emotional maturity of a 5-year-old in a 250-pound body. That is dangerous. That is hella dangerous. And it was like, oh my God, I have to grow up in public. I'm gonna have to do, it's embarrassing. So okay, my decision was yes. Okay, I don't care how embarrassing it is. I'm like, no way. And that's tapping into that emotion of anger. Screw you, I'm not living like this.
Well, I think that's a good place to bring this to an end. So, as always, I'd like to invite.
I am, Marty, I am so glad we had this conversation. I've been wanting this conversation. I didn't know it for a long time, to ferret out this anger versus violence. Right. Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, and be willing to do it in public.
And be willing to do it in public. Thank you, Marty.
So as always, I'd like to invite anybody who's watching this, if you'd like to participate in the accountability practice. John facilitates a meeting on Saturday mornings at 8:30 Pacific time. I facilitate a meeting Monday evenings, 6:30 Pacific time. There are 2 other meetings. There's a men's meeting Tuesday at 6 p.m. and there's another accountability practice meeting on Thursday nights at 6:30, all Pacific time. At the end of the podcast, there'll be email addresses for me and John, anybody who would like to get a Zoom invitation. These are still all on Zoom right now. Please send us a note. We'll be happy to send you an invitation. The practice works by working it, not by thinking about it. So we invite everybody who would like to have some experience of this for yourself. Please feel free to join us at one of those times. So as always, John, I'd like to see if you any last word before we wrap up.
I just want to express my gratitude for this venue, Marty, and you for allowing me to explore myself and adding to this body of work that we're creating. Really cool.
Yeah, likewise. I think at the end of this month, we'll have done a whole year of this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Wow.
Well, have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing what we learn about ourselves next week.
There you go. Yeah, me too. Thank you, Marty.
Thanks, John.